Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Crash Zoom. I'm Sammie Purcell, Associate Editor with Rough Draft Atlanta, and I'm here as always with a very slap-happy Aaron Strand. How are you doing today, Aaron?
Sammie, I just spent a weekend in the city that never sleeps, and I'm trying to wake myself up. There was nothing reminded me of. I don't do cocaine anymore. Let me just put this out there very, very clearly.
Solid.
I don't do cocaine anymore. But being back in New York, it made a lot of sense why I once did. Because, and now all I have is to just slap myself in the face until I wake back up.
You know, whatever works and keeps you healthy, will be good stuff. Yeah. Well, if this is your first episode of Crash Zoom, welcome to the podcast. What Aaron and I do here is we take a look at what's going on in the film industry on a big picture level, and we try to boil down why that matters to the independent artist. And if you listen today and you like what you hear, please hit that subscribe button. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also watch us on YouTube at Crash Zoom Podcast. So be sure to rate and review as well. That really helps us out. But before we dive into the news, and there have been some big late-breaking items that we've added to the docket today, we always like to start with the simple question. Aaron, what have you been watching?
Yeah, I've been watching a bunch of stuff at festivals here in New York City. I was up bringing Withdrawal to the Art of Brooklyn Film Festival this past weekend. And I want to tell you a little story if you are willing to hear me out here, because I had a full Crash Zoom experience. You know, I had the truest kind of independent film sort of, you know, at the bottom rung of the totem pole kind of vibe, and then also kind of experience the sort of like bigger side of the industry, and I kind of was moving through it all in this very strange way. Let me start off by just saying I had this narrative in my head of what this weekend was going to feel like for me. For those who don't know, I used to live in New York City. It's like the only place that feels like home for me. I had to leave because I had all these personal problems, and this was like 12 years ago. And I've, in one way, shape, or form, have kind of been like plotting my return ever since, and it's never and it just never have been able to pull it off. And so there was some narrative I had in my head about going to this film festival, bringing this feature film that I've worked so hard on and I'm so proud of back to New York City, and that I had this like chip on my shoulder. It was like I was gonna come back and like tell everyone like all of you who doubted me, like who think I live in like, you know, like down in like, you know, in the boonies down in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm gonna show you what I can do. These people that like definitely are not thinking this about me, but you know, I had this like this thing, and of course I had the ultimate New York experience, which is not getting to fulfill your grievances and your chips on your shoulders. Instead, I had the experience of like everybody was out of town or they flaked on me. Everybody.
So the typical New York experience, you know?
Dude, New York is the flakiest fucking place. It really is. Everybody's so busy and everyone's kind of so stressed out and everyone's got their own shit going on and everyone will tell you, oh yeah, I'll make it to that thing, and then they don't show up. And that is like the ultimate New York experience. Anyway, but you know who did show up was this amazing festival, the Art of Brooklyn Film Festival, which I was just so impressed by these guys and gals that put this together. You know, a really small filmmaker-focused festival. They bring in different filmmakers every year to program the selections. So it's not like one programmer or one programming team, sort of programming intelligentsia. Instead, it's a filmmaker whose films showed at the festival in previous years that then comes in and curates for that year, which really is a very unique thing. But like more festivals should be doing this, honestly, because it puts a kind of a very unique sort of filmmaker focused approach to the whole thing. They partnered with all these amazing little micro cinemas in Brooklyn. So Withdrawal played at a place called the Stewart Cinema in Greenpoint, which is a little 50-seat DIY built theater. Like they play big movies. They're playing like Mission Impossible, but it's also like it's perfectly a kind of perfect space for these like small, intimate, very low budget kind of experiences, and the vibes there were just amazing. The guys who are running the theater and talking about the woman who built the theater were just so cool and like down to earth and just like loved movies, you know. And then the next night I was over at a shorts block at another theater called Film Noir Cinema, which was another sort of like 50-60 seat house. And there, the guy who ran that, first of all, the lobby was essentially like a bootleg DVD shop, which was fucking incredible. Of like some of the most obscure movies. And the guy who was the homie who ran that theater, Will, just encyclopedic knowledge about European releases of these films you can't find, and like who has the English dub track and who has the original language track, and like just, oh man, you know, just like just my people, like the nerdiest fucking shit. And I really loved everything about it. Contrast that with last night, Sunday night. I head over to Tribeca, the Tribeca Film Festival, which was happening at the same time. And I went to go see this new movie called Sovereign by a director named Christian Sweigel. It's a film starring Nick Offerman, and it's based on a real story about this dad who was this like kind of crazy sovereign citizen, and basically like indoctrinates his son into this sovereign citizen kind of world. Dennis Quaid was the cop, plays the cop trying to like track them down. Anyway, so this is bad. So now I'm going to like from the salt of the earth 50-seat Brooklyn micro cinemas into the big glitz of the big festival and like everything that entails with that. And I was there supporting my friend who has a pretty large part in this film, and she absolutely crushed. And I was like so happy to be there for her. However, like there's something about the bigger festival that like it does not make you feel like you're part of the crowd. It makes you feel like very much like less than welcome, you know. There's like all these different there's a red carpet, you know, there's all these like different ticket lines that you have to stand in. You're constantly feel kind of like not enough, you know, like they kind of like as just a regular ticket holder, not even a badge holder, you feel like it's like you're not even like really wanted there. Everyone is all dressed up, but like very clearly kind of looking over their shoulder and sort of like looking for like who else is there. I mean, you know the vibe. Like this is like very kind of big corporate film festival vibe. And it was really epitomized by this experience that I had, because I get into the theater. I finally get into the theater. I'm sitting there by myself. I sat in the aisle. And there were some seats in front of me that had VIP reservations. And some poor Tribeca intern or volunteer was tasked with guarding these VIP seats, okay? And this couple, who I may have invested some money into the film or something like that, they came over, and the guy was kind of one of these, he's just, I don't know any other way to describe him. He was a kind of a bulbous rich guy. He had a big belly and this big crisp kind of white shirt with a fat collar. He just kind of like, he smelled like kind of greasy money, you know what I mean? And he and his wife really wanted to sit in these VIP seats, okay? And this intern told him like, I'm sorry, I'm saving these for somebody else. And he was so fucking pissed. He was livid that he could not sit in these VIP seats, okay? And then the intern, usher, whatever, puts them next to me. And so now this guy is sitting next to me. And all he did for the whole intro to the film, he's just bitching to his wife about how they can't sit in these seats, which are literally one row in front of us and like just across the aisle. Like it's the exact same seats in this theater, like no different. But he is so offended and so pissed. And so then he proceeds to spend the entire movie texting like between his legs, like in his crotch, like texting his daughters. I mean, I was sitting right next to him. I couldn't help but see who he was texting. He's just like
very
texting
bright light
people.
in a dark theater.
Oh yeah, he couldn't care less about the movie. He also couldn't stop farting because he just smelled like I'm pretty sure he was wasted too. So he smelled like this mixture of like alcohol and then like a periodic fart about every 15 minutes that he was letting loose into this theater. And in this kind of environment that's like filled with like corporate ads and corporate money and sort of all these like barriers that like don't really make it necessarily feel about the filmmaker themselves, I couldn't help but wonder like who is this all for? Who is this all for? Yeah. And then I look to my left, and I have a feeling that this gentleman sitting next to me is in many ways what these type of institutional structures are actually for. And that is like an incredibly depressing thought. Because of course, like I like the element that I'm not bringing into my narrative here is that like I'm incredibly jealous. Like obviously I wish I was playing at Tribeca. Obviously I was
Yeah.
wishing that I was at the top of this sort of structure of power, and I hate having to be at the bottom and sort of looking up at it. Like that
Hmm.
feels terrible. It makes me feel like a fucking joke of an artist. And yet still I have this experience of sitting next to this guy who's just the nastiest person.
Right.
And I was able to walk away with my head held high and very grateful for who I spent the majority of my time with this weekend.
That's good. He sounds a little miserable, so,
Oh, and the best part is that as soon as the movie was over, he gets up, he like jumps over my legs, and because no one came and sat in these VIP seats the entire film, and
I was gonna ask, yeah.
for the Q&A, he scampers across the aisle and he goes sits in those VIP seats for the
Oh my
Q&A.
God. I just can't imagine this theater is that
so
big
weird.
that like it's that much of a difference in your vantage point.
If I had to guess, it was a 200 to 250 seat house. It was not a big theater.
But like, yeah, I don't know. This guy sounds like he's not very joyful in life. So
dude, this guy had some issues for sure.
I had a pretty different experience this weekend. So it was a nice weekend. It was really kind of low key. When it wasn't raining, I was like, oh, I can go to the pool. And when it was raining, I was inside watching movies. And I had what I'm calling kind of like a trashy teen horror weekend. So it was gearing up we saw the new Final Destination movie yesterday, this Sunday, which if you like that kind of thing, so much fun. Like maybe the best of the franchise, just like a really, really fun time. So I caught up on pretty much all of the Final Destinations because it was always one of those franchises that like you kind of know if you're just like alive. Like I know about the plane crash, I know about the logging, I know about all that stuff. But I was like, yeah, I guess I've never actually like sat down and watched them all the way through. So I did a lot of that, which was a lot of fun. And that sort of got me in like that kind of trashy teenage cheesy horror kind of mindset. So I then proceeded to rewatch I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is a hysterical movie.
Dude. Isn't Anne Heche wild in that movie?
Yes, she's great. Like, it is funny. I can't take credit for this joke. It was a Letterboxd review. I can't remember who it was, but they're like, it's kind of funny that like one of the scarier set pieces in this movie is just going to Anne Heche's house. That's like frightening enough.
It really is. Because nothing like really happens there, right? Like she's just weird.
No, there's just like, she's just kind of weird and like country is really like the kind of the main crux of what's going on with her. And she ends up like being totally fine. Like she like is just kind of a normal person who's kind of sad.
She's definitely not a normal person, but she's just sad and lonely.
Right, yeah.
And isn't that also where we get the like random spinning over the head Jennifer Love Hewitt? Like, what do you want?
No, that is after she finds Johnny. Is that his name? Johnny Galecki? Leonard from The Big Bang Theory? Is that his name? Johnny?
No,
well, Leonard from The Big Bang Theory he's like gets killed and he's in her trunk of the car with all the crabs. That's when she does that. She does come and get us.
yeah.
With her awful bangs. They're so bad. Oh my God. But Sarah Michelle Gellar is good in that movie. Her death sequence is fun. But that's what I watched. And then I proceeded to watch The Faculty for the first time because I was I'm on a roll.
How many movies did you watch this weekend, Sammie? Did you even go outside? Did you see the
like
sun?
Torrential. Yes, I did. I went to the pool when it wasn't raining. It was like torrential downpour like half the time this weekend down here. It was not good. It was like scary at some points. But I watched The Faculty for the first time. Another extremely silly movie, but I had a really nice time. It was funny.
Dude,
weird stuff about there's like the funniest part about that movie is Clea Duvall's whole character. They're like, she's a lesbian, and she's like, actually, I'm not a lesbian. I'm just adhering to your expectation of me. And then at the end, she like puts on a pink outfit and kisses the quarterback. And I was like, what's happening? It's silly. It was fun. It was a nice kind of like very low key weekend. I wasn't doing high class stuff. I was having fun.
yeah low key weekend, banging out like 6 movies.
Well, the Final Destination ones were over the course of the week, so I didn't do any of those this weekend. But
There's something about you, like you particularly love franchises whose titles are completely misleading as to the content of the film. Mission Impossible, he keeps
it's
doing the
possible.
missions.
Yeah.
Final Destination, there's like 6 of them.
Well,
Not so
I realize
final.
why it's called that. It's called that because of the plane. Like, because when they get on the plane in the first one, they're like, your final destination. Like that is, I'm guessing why it was called that in the first place.
It was all
And like,
for
you know,
a gimmick of like plane jargon, a
plane, I
plane
guess
pun. It was
so.
a plane
And they were
pun
like,
title.
it's not really a pun, I guess. It's just like, oh,
Well,
like
no, it's
your
a
final
play.
destination is Paris, but it's your final destination death. Like,
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, it's a play. It's a play on
Yeah.
words, I guess, is the more
Yeah,
accurate
yeah,
term.
yeah.
Not exactly a pun, but it's a
But
play on words. A play on
but
colloquial
I
phrases.
play on colloquial phrases. It is also funny in the second Final Destination, especially. Every single cast member is like a B-list TV star who is also incredibly important to me specifically. Like it's like the Chief from Battlestar Galactica, Mikey from Shameless. Like it's like all these different people, or Mickey from Shameless, I should say. Where I was like, oh hey, oh hey, oh hey. I think that's the one. AJ Cook is her name. I think she's in Criminal Minds. Yeah, she's in that one, if I'm not mistaken.
How does it feel to be the living flesh, like algorithmic target of the
Oh, it's of
casting
weird,
of Final Destination
pretty
2?
cool. Like I was like, dang, like we've got Criminal Minds, we've got Battlestar Galactica, we've got Once Upon a Time, which is the weirdest one, but that is something I watched obsessively when I was 14. And then like yeah, Shameless, all this stuff. It was wild. I was like, wow, good job, guys. That movie is weird. Final Destination 2, maybe one of the better ones. Weird. Weird. That's all I'll say.
All right. All
Yeah.
right. Fair enough.
Should we dive into more serious topics?
Yeah, let's do it because we finally got a news story breaking just before we record. Usually it's the day after or like 2 days after, and
Right.
we are texting each other as the episode comes out, being like, well, this is out
Damn
of
it.
date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this was published at 4:16 this Monday morning, June 9th, and it is the announcement that Warner Brothers Discovery is splitting in two. So we're splitting. We're, I guess, doing a de-merge of sorts, I must say. So Warner Brothers Discovery will be splitting into two different companies. There'll be sort of a streaming and studios side of the company, and that'll consist of Warner Brothers Television, Warner Brothers Motion Picture, DC, HBO, HBO Max, all the streaming and film production stuff, essentially. And then the second business is Global Networks, which will include entertainment, sports, news, television, like CNN, TNT, all that kind of stuff. So we're basically kind of like separating cable out here, pushing cable over here, streaming and studios over here. And I was this was published by the Hollywood Reporter earlier this morning, I would say in a fairly like context-less article that's just kind of a bunch of like stuff taken from press releases and little sources, I'm assuming. So I was reading sort of a CNN article and they kind of dove into it at least a little more. And this essentially how the way the CNN
Was it
article
hard to
frames
read
it.
the CNN article between the teardrops of the writer who was writing it? Did the teardrops smear the ink
I didn't even make that
they were
connection.
writing?
No. Well, not digitally at least. I don't know what their computer looks like, but props to them. Props to them. So essentially, the cable television, we talk about this all the time. It's not doing well, and so the way CNN frames this is it's basically Warner Brothers Discovery's answer to investor pressure, and sort of the shift to streaming to sort of convince shareholders like a more, I guess, pivotal way to invest in HBO Max, like that part of the business, without having exposure to cable. So, what do you think about all this, Aaron? We're breaking the news, kind of.
Yeah. Oh, breaking the news. It was not a shocker at all. Everybody knew this
No.
was coming. Comcast, Universal did this several months ago, and they have still, it's going to be another year before they're able to successfully do this.
Right.
They're trying to do this split tax free, and that's where they will need approval from the federal government, and who knows what the Trump administration is going to do to try to punish them, or try to punish like the CNN of this to win political
Right.
points. They are claiming that they can do this split without paying any taxes. We will see. But this is not a shock at all. We kind of all knew this was coming. Zaz came in with the merger of HBO and Warner Brothers and Discovery, claiming that by bringing all these different cable networks and studios together, that they were going to be able to compete on the biggest level with this massive content library. And it just completely failed, because cable failed a lot faster than people thought. The switch, COVID came, the switch to streaming accelerated, and the cable networks are, while still profitable, are dying faster than anyone thought. And now these entities are a huge drag on the overall finances of the company. The carriage fees are just not anything what they used to be, and so it's all going down. And the biggest problem with this merger was that it left the company with about $50 billion in debt, which they've done a really good job on paying off. But the debt of that merger just forever saddled them. They were unable to grow or invest in production and shows and sort of new ventures in the same way that Netflix does. So everyone has been predicting this for about the last 2 years, and so it finally comes out that they're going to do it. So no surprises there. I have some winners and losers coming out of this deal.
Yeah.
I think I got two winners. Not that this is like that shocking. The biggest winner I think is Zaz, because he just last week he received a little slap in the face from shareholders who voted against his $52 million per year pay package. Unbinding vote, so he's still going to get paid. The board is still like kissing his ass. And here we have something that changes the narrative. The stock they released this at 4:16 in the morning, because Monday morning the stock price popped about 10%. It's gone down since then, but the market clearly likes this move from Warner Brothers Discovery, and so it couldn't come at a better time for Zaz, because it changes the narrative away from his exorbitant pay package, which I believe is the 8th largest CEO paycheck in the United States. Just absolutely mind-blowing, considering that since he took over, the stock has lost about 60% of its value.
Right.
Unbelievable. So anyway, great winner for Zaz is a winner. And then HBO. I think HBO continues their sort of like, after being
HBO Max, you mean? Sorry.
I mean, just the HBO brand. I mean,
I know.
Zaz came in, decentralized HBO from this whole HBO Discovery package, and then has slowly learned the hard way that, actually our prestige brand that is universally recognized for making some of the best drama out there is actually where we should keep the center of this whole thing. And by losing all these cable networks and all this kind of trash programming that they were really counting on for viewer retention, it's just going to further centralize HBO into the middle of this. The losers here, I have just one sort of broad loser. I mean, I think there's a number of losers here, but what I really want to focus in on as the losers here, the losers are sports. Not only is it TNT, their sports coverage is already going to go down. They lost the deal for the NBA going forward. This was something that shareholders really didn't like, but also they didn't really have the money to pay for the TNT rights, because they had all this debt to pay. But I think one of the saddest things is that Bleacher Report, which is actually a somewhat successful acquisition for them, is getting spun off into the global network side of the business and being jettisoned away with the flotsam of the cable bundle. And who knows what's going to come of that. And by taking away Bleacher Report, which is like a major sort of news outlet for sports coverage, employs a lot of people across all the different sports in America, a lot of writers, a lot of podcasters, a lot of like content creators or whatever. That's their future is uncertain. And then by taking away TNT from the investment pool, now you have one less bidding partner for any sports league that is looking for a rights deal in the future, and that's going to decrease competition and just ultimately probably drive the price down. So I think
Hmm.
sports are kind of a big loser here. What do you think about that?
Well, it's interesting, and I was kind of researching this while you were talking because I don't know enough about Bleacher Report to know. But the end of the CNN article kind of talks about like the kind of global or the network side of things, like those brands starting to move into having streaming assets of their own as well. And in that list, they include like Discovery Plus and Bleacher Report. So I was sort of looking to see if Bleacher Report like has a streaming, like some sort of like streaming service. It's not just like a channel on YouTube.
I
Um,
think they just have the YouTube
they
shows.
This says they launched something called like BNR Live, but it was
Mm,
discontinued in 2021, so it's
mm.
done. But according to the CNN article, they might soon have some streaming assets of their own, and also apparently CNN is building a new streaming service that's set to launch later this year. So it looks like those kind of the network side of things is still hoping to like bank on the streaming side of things as well, or the streaming services and platform. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, sports for Warner Brothers Discovery, at least, is probably not looking very great. I think sports in general are fine, but it does kind of shunt them to the side. And I don't know how, I really don't know what they're kind of going to do moving forward.
I don't think that global networks as an entity, I mean, we have
Hmm.
yet to see sort of how the debt is going to be split up between these two companies. I would imagine they're going to try to put more of it on the sinking ship, right? Like,
Hmm.
I would guess.
God.
Uh, this guy. I feel for this guy, this CFO of WBD, Gunnar Weidenfels, who is
Uh-huh.
left to take over the global network side of this business. Zaz gets to ride away on HBO, and poor Gunnar, who he feels like sort of like Tom Wamsgans from Succession, is like left with the
Oh,
Shitco
yeah.
spinoff. Um,
Just to kind of say what is Tom, but just to affirm what you just said, CNN, most of the remaining 37 billion in debt will go with global networks.
yeah.
And then Weidenfels said a quote not insignificant portion end quote will go to the streaming side, but it sounds like they will be saddled with most of it.
Oh yeah, no shit. They're
Yeah.
gonna put their giant ship pile onto the sinking barge,
Yeah.
and from what everyone says, they're sending it
Ugh.
off in the hopes that it either like merges with Comcast's SpinCo to turn it into
Hmm.
this big like shitty pile of cable networks that nobody wants, and so might want to do that, but even if they don't, either way, the sort of end result is mostly that these things are going to be gobbled up by private equity, strip mined for assets, and then like finally laid to rest, which will
Hmm.
essentially expedite and complete the death of cable. It's quite shocking.
Yeah, I mean, I guess let's get ready for it. God.
I mean,
All
I
right.
say it's quite shocking,
Ugh.
but it's also
It's
just
expected. It's
inevitable.
just
It's
like,
inevitable. Yeah, it's just shocking how quickly it's happening. It's just happening faster than we everyone believed.
speaking of inevitable, there's a really great quote in one of the next two articles that I've kind of bunched together in a Vulture quote where someone is at an AA. They're at a party about AI. Like, actually, let me rewind. Let me explain what we're talking about first, and then I'll explain the inevitable quote. All right.
Contextualize us,
So,
Sammie. Where are we?
so
We're at a
this
party?
this next article. So the first of two that I've got kind of mixed together. This first one's from Variety. It involves Aaron's favorite studio, Lionsgate. Um, so Lionsgate. Lionsgate boss is essentially explaining Lionsgate's AI plan, sort of running forward. I originally saw this in the Daily's newsletter. So if you'll remember, Lionsgate has a Runway partnership. I believe they signed it last September, and that was Hollywood's first sort of like major AI deal. Like, will allow you to sort of train on our library of existing things. And Vice Chairman Michael Burns of Lionsgate essentially just kind of revealed what they're sort of exploring moving forward, which is transforming every movie in their catalog. This is a quote from the Variety article into endless variations for different audiences and markets. So that essentially means like, hey, here we have John Wick. I want to make John Wick an anime and I want to make it rated PG-13. And then the AI does that, which is sort of crazy, I think. But it's essentially, that's one of the things they're exploring. And then the other part of what they're exploring are just basically cost saving measures. So they were sort of talking about a movie that they didn't name what it was, but it has like a 10,000 soldier battle scene. And instead of doing that and have it cost like $100 million for the production budget, AI do it, cost 50 million. So kind of related to this article, which I don't know if you want to pause there and kind of give your thoughts on what you think about that before we move on to this Vulture piece. But
No, let's talk. Let's get all the context
let's
out.
get it all out. Okay.
Let's go to the
Right.
party.
It's a lot of stuff. Let's go to the party.
God.
The AI party. We're going to the
hate all of
entities
this
party.
so much. I hate all of this so fucking much.
I do too. That's for all my Mission Impossible heads. We're going to the entities party. Aaron, the entity is the villain, the AI villain in the last Mission Impossible movies. Mm-hmm. So this Vulture article, it's from Lila Shapiro. And this article is sort of digging into the way AI kind of writ large is used in films. And it also has a little bit where it mentions the Lionsgate stuff and how they sort of plan to use it. But it centers on this party that Natasha Lyonne and Bryan, I think that's a typo. What's his name? Mooser?
Bryan Mooser.
Bryan Mooser. I wrote Mooter. All right. That Natasha Lyonne and Bryan Mooser held for their new AI film studio, Asteria, is what it's called. So the inevitable comment that I made sort of at the beginning of this long-winded thing is there's a very funny quote in here, and I feel like we kind of say this a lot on this podcast, so it made me laugh. The journalist Lila Shapiro talks about sort of walking around this party and seeing like executives and filmmakers, and it's funny because some of them are like pretending they're not there or like won't give their names and all this other stuff. But she has a great line. She says, "As I wandered past clusters of studio executives in suits and filmmakers in baseball caps and jeans, I heard the word inevitable 5 times," which I think I do genuinely believe that it probably is at this point. But I do think it also is something people kind of say when they don't want to like actively fight against it, if that makes sense. Like it's like an easy sort of like, well, it's going to happen anyway, so we might as well. And like, even if that's true, but that sort of like little tidbit in this article made me laugh. But yeah, so those are sort of the bare bones of both of these articles. What are your thoughts besides hatred?
Well, yeah. So when we started this podcast 6 months ago, I was coming in, talking about the inevitability of AI, and that everyone who's like out here tearing it down, like you're being arrogant, this is a tool, yada yada yada. There's an inevitability to this. Like, why fight it? Like, get on board, and like you need to stay on the cutting edge. Blah 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 blah. And I have really, the more I've learned, the more I've read, really as a byproduct of the show, have really come to a different belief system. I think the inevitability that AI tools are going to invade workflows, yes, I would say that is most likely the case.
Right.
But
yeah.
Let's start off by just talking about the Lionsgate side. So they went from announcing this partnership with Runway, that they were going to train AI, this wonderful AI system on their big beautiful back catalog of classic films, that only the highest quality entertainment that Lionsgate produces. As we know, they are the modern day like Roger Corman studio. If Roger Corman did IP, he would have founded Lionsgate. Anyway, but you wouldn't have even had like, some bangers in there. You wouldn't have even had The Raven. You wouldn't have had The Shooting, whatever. Okay. So anyway, all right. But now they're coming out and saying that the actual way they're going to use this is not to make movies, to not like make, big and I keep saying big beautiful because fucking Trump is like seated in my brain. I'm so sorry.
Stop it. It's not a big beautiful bill.
It's not a big beautiful. It's nothing's big and beautiful. It's nothing's big and beautiful. It's all small and ugly. They're gonna. So now instead of these grand movies and stories that are enhanced by AI, they're gonna repackage their old catalog and just do the George Lucas approach to distribution, where they're gonna, take out guns and replace them with walkie-talkies, essentially, or like they're gonna turn it into anime, and then they're gonna let
Yeah.
AI just automatically edit it to turn into PG-13. Who wants this? Who would ever watch this? What? This is a gimmick. This is not. Has nothing about staying power.
It makes no sense to me because like the way they're sort of framing it is like to make like a kid friendly version of John Wick. Like why would you as a parent, like even if it was kid friendly, why? Like why? I don't think I just don't understand. Why is a kid interested in John Wick? Like I don't know.
As we know, the multi-stop distribution system has collapsed. Once upon a time, you had all these stops along your distribution journey to make sales, and back before everything just went on streaming, you were able to make a sale to the airlines and to hotels and to premium cable and to cable and home video, and you were able to generate all that money. And so I get that they're trying to like maybe use AI to reintroduce this sort of like these stops along the road where it's like they have the movie and then they have the PG-13 version and then they have the anime version and like whatever, but like this just feels like a fundamental betrayal of like everything we know about audience taste. Like audiences have time and time again rejected the fucking with like movies that they love. They don't like it. They don't like colorized black and white movies. Remember when that was like a thing from the 90s and you'd see all these like weird like colorized black and white movies like on cable?
The like, color version of It's a Wonderful Life like haunts me.
Who wants this? And and of course the George Lucas, Steven Spielberg editing of their classic films, like it feels like a betrayal.
But even like Spielberg, like you brought up the walkie-talkies thing, didn't he like come out and be like, "Yeah, that was dumb.
That was dumb. Yeah,
that was stupid. I shouldn't have done that."
I think Lucas still feels very confident about all of his edits to Star Wars. Obviously, we can't even watch the original ones anymore. But yes, Spielberg at least was like cognizant enough to be like, "Yeah, that was dumb.
That was bad. Bad
that
idea.
Was dumb.
Yeah.
That was bad. That was bad." So okay, so that's what they're planning on doing, which I think is ridiculous. Now they talk about this like this theoretical shot in this action movie where you have 10,000 soldiers on a snowy hill, and once upon a time that shot would have made that movie impossible to greenlight because it just would have expanded the budget too much. And now we have AI and we can use it on 10,000 soldiers on a snowy hill. And you know what? I say that's totally reasonable because all that shit, all those type of shots look like totally fake CGI right now. It already looks cheap and schlocky. The real question is, well, I have two real questions. The first real question is, why do filmmakers and studios feel like they need to recreate these like Peter Jackson like helicopter shots of battles taking place? And if they're really that budgetarily concerned, why don't they find a more creative way to tell these stories? Like, these are not make or break storytelling elements. Look, like, people were making war films in 1910s without, 10,000 soldiers on a hill. So, like, to me, the underlying problem is a lack of imagination as to how to tell these stories in a new and compelling way. And if we're using AI to plug holes in a sinking ship as opposed to innovating something new, then that is also a real testament. But which brings me to the ultimate question: are we not using AI to innovate something new because maybe AI can't innovate anything new?
Well, that like jumping a little bit over to the Vulture article, like I thought there was like a really telling, let me see if I can find it. It's towards the end. It's Natasha Lyonne talking about a movie that she is like kind of starting to make. I don't really want to get into what's it about. It doesn't matter for the context of the story, but she's basically working on this movie, and she kind of says like she hasn't like used any AI on it yet, but she plans to use this AI kind of model that they've come up with at Asteria to generate visuals in the film's second half. And then she goes on to say, quote, the article says, quote, she had attempted to use it for screenwriting, but the results didn't meet her standards. Natasha Lyonne, quote, I have not figured out at all how to use it in writing that I actually feel good about. I want it so badly to work. And when she said that, I was sort of like, why? Like, why do you want it so badly to work? Like, is it just like you don't want to do, like, I just really don't understand, like, what is it just like time management? Like, I really don't understand that sentence at all.
Yeah.
And if it's
Yeah.
not working, isn't that like saying something? Like, if like the visuals are sort of moving up in standard, which I think they are, like, I won't like take it away from AI, you know what I mean? But like, these things are getting better. Like, that's kind of, it's clear to see. They're not great, but they've moved, and they'll probably continue to move. But if it's so stagnant in like writing still, and I still feel like it is, like, I feel like you can really tell when something was like written by a bot. Like, I just don't know. Like, maybe it's not ever going to work. Why do we want it to work so bad?
So well, I don't know what her perspective is, but I did want to
Yeah.
come on here and I wanted to share a personal experience that I've been
Okay.
having the last 2 months.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've been working on a treatment for the
Mm-hmm.
what I might be the next film that I make, and I was looking for a way to integrate AI into my workflow. I was like willing to experiment, with it
Mm-hmm.
and try it out and see if, and for the sole purpose of like, you know, getting lost in like a 2-year development writing like period is
Mm-hmm.
long, infuriating. Sometimes it just feels like totally hopeless. If there's anything that we could do to speed that up, if we could use a tool to expedite time, then
Right.
it would be worth it. And so I was banging around on this story, and I'm working out the beats, and I'm trying to transfer it to about a 10-page treatment. That's what I was doing. Before I format anything into a written screenplay, I
Mm-hmm.
always try to. I don't move forward until I have a 5 to 10-page treatment. Usually, I expand that to like a 20-page treatment before we ever talk about writing dialogue in a script.
Mm-hmm.
That's my process. And so I was trying to use AI to help with this treatment development. And at first I was kind of using it because I just was trying to get over the hump of like the first draft of a paragraph that you write, which can just feel so stilted and so
Mm-hmm.
awkward and so yucky sometimes. And like, if I could just get from draft 1 to draft 2 more efficiently, maybe, I could find the voice of the story faster. I could find the voice of the characters faster. I started off by using ChatGPT for that process, just simply with the prompt of like, I would enter in a paragraph that I had just written, along with the prompt of like, can you edit and make this more concise?
Mm-hmm.
I then started adding in, can you edit and make this more concise? And then I would add in like, in the style of Raymond Chandler, and see just like what it would spit out, which was obviously just some like plagiarized plagiarized metaphors in the
Right.
Raymond Chandler style. As I was doing this, now keep in mind, I didn't want to tell anybody that I was doing this, because just like the people at Natasha Lyonne's party, I didn't want to be
Yeah.
shamed and I didn't want to be judged that I was like
Mm-hmm.
experimenting around. Um, okay. Then we have our conversation about ChatGPT and sort of their training on copyright materials, and so I was like, I can't use them anymore. So then I switched over to
Mm-hmm.
Anthropic's chatbot, to Claude, and I started doing the same thing. And
Yeah.
while it was spitting out, yes, edited paragraphs, and the syntax would sometimes be improved, and sometimes like metaphors would
Yeah.
be brought out, it still really felt stilted. And um, and I was not really making the progress on the writing, on the actual story. I was not getting more confident in the story. In fact, I was wasting so much time diddling around with chatbot prompts and like
Mm-hmm.
searching for metaphors. I was totally losing the forest for the trees, which is like a kind of
Mm-hmm.
typical like narrative writing problem that I encounter. So the AI was actually not helping me jump over
Right.
that hurdle. Now, it all led to a moment about a month and a half ago, where I sat down with somebody and really hammered out this story, talked through the beats all over again, cracked my problem, solved some act break issues that I was having, and finally I felt like I seized control of this narrative through line. And it felt so good to know the and feel confident about this narrative through line. And I'd already like I felt like I wasted all this time like fucking around with these chatbots. So when it came
Mm-hmm.
time for the next draft of the treatment, I said, you know what? Fuck this. I'm getting a brand new notebook and a pen. I'm sitting down.
Right.
I'm writing this fucking thing by hand. I
Mm-hmm.
spent I had a weekend. I spent Saturday writing an 8-page treatment by hand. I spent Sunday just transcribing that treatment into a Word document. I walked away with a finished story. All the problems of flow were solved. All the issues were solved. And what it took for me was handwriting, going back to like
Right.
an even more analog system of writing and just
Mm-hmm.
knowing the story that I was telling. And I found that the AI chatbots could not help me at all with any of those issues. And this is just
Yeah.
my personal experience. Going forward, I do not think I will be wasting any more time messing around with chatbots as a way to improve as a writer. Although I will say, if I was toying around 15 years ago and not really knowing what I know now about story development and sort of what makes a good story, I would be easily seduced by some of the quick fixes that AI chatbots are able to bring to
Sure.
your writing.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was tempted. I fooled around, and I have come back to my first love, my true and only marriage partner, which is just a pen and paper. And I think that's how I will be continuing going forward. But I did want to share. I wanted to come on and be honest about my experience here.
I appreciate that. And it's interesting, like, and I want to say, I really like Natasha Lyonne, like, as an actress. Like, I always enjoy seeing her. Like, I think she's a great performer. I think, like, what kind of rubs me weird about that quote is, like, at the front kind of end of this article, there's a lot of talk about the inevitable word again. Like, we should, like, get in charge of this thing. We should get ahead of this thing, do it ethically as ethically as we can before it becomes, like, you know, too big to handle, right? Like, there's this sort of, like, narrative of, like, well, maybe we wouldn't, like, choose this, but, like, we need to do this because it's going to happen. And I think, like, saying I really wish this would work, like, negates that in a lot of ways. Like, I don't know, it just is something I was thinking about. Like, I don't know if that made any sense, but it just is interesting to, like, hear the kind of tension in those statements, I guess. Like,
Well,
well, we need to make this work versus, like, I really want this to work, or, like,
yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I thought that there was all sorts of sort of like not Freudian slips, but just like such clear cognitive dissonance in quotes throughout
Yeah.
this article of various things
Mhm.
that people were saying. I can never, I can never stop thinking about there. I was reading a book about the birth of photography and the birth of film, and it was all sort of happening at this amazing time in the 1880s into the 1890s. And one of the things that you don't often think about is that this was the moment when trains were really like changing everything about about society. For the first time, traveling from New York to California used to take like 4.5 months, and now all of a sudden you could do it in like 5 days. And like
Right.
trains were speeding things up. And it's so interesting to go back and read what people were talking about when talking about trains. They would say, these things are going to make your life so much easier. This is going to take all the burden away. No more wagons out west, and like, this, and like, who knows all the ways that trains are going to make society, they're going to give you back your leisure time. And there were people even at that moment saying, this is a lie. That actually your life is going to become infinitely more busy. The
Mhm.
introduction of this technology that's going to speed up the pace of life, it's going to speed up the pace of your life. You are going to have to
Mhm.
do more shit every day because of trains. And I think about this because we've experienced all these technological revolutions in our own lifetime, and every time they come along, it's like, this is going to make things so much easier for you. Oh, the internet is in the palm of your hand. This is going to make things so much easier for you. You're going to get so much time back. And what do? We spend 6 hours a day scrolling on social media and texting and like doing all this bullshit, and it's like taking
Right.
our time away from us. Every time a techno utopian comes along and says this new technology is going to give you your time back or going to relieve you of your time, it's a lie. It's at the most generous. It is an incomplete picture about what this technology is going to be bringing to you. And
Mhm.
I never ever forget this. There's a gentleman here. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm going to butcher this. It's Hemant Taneja. I'm not sure. He's a techno futurist AI guy, CEO of a company called General Catalyst. He's a big proponent of Natasha Lyonne and Mooser's company over here. And he said, quote, "We're trying to show the proof points that AI isn't just a risk, it's an opportunity. It makes everybody superhuman."
That quote freaks me out.
Well, it's a fucking lie. It's a lie.
I'm also like, if everybody's superhuman, then no one's superhuman, right? So like, it's also like,
that would be the most generous reading of that quote, which is that like, okay, we all get progressively better because of this technology. I think that's not true. We already are seeing research coming out that use of AI makes the majority of people dumber, lazier, and less capable of complex thought. Instead, it makes the owners of these companies superhumanly rich. That's what's happening here. Not that the populace doesn't. I don't think the populace is receiving the sort of like superhuman ubermensch benefits of this thing. It's a bold-faced lie.
Yeah, there's another kind of going off of that, like our quote down further from a VFX artist who I don't think is named, but they're essentially talking about like attending some meetings with different studio execs, and they say, quote, "I've listened to execs say, so we can load a season of scripts into AI and it can churn out a show in a day." And I'm just like, is that what you want? And when it kind of reminds me of what you just said, like it makes it like, if you can churn out a show in a day, then it's just like, okay, well, do another one, like do another one, do another one. And you're just like constantly, like, if that's what we're doing, we're already inundated with content that like isn't that great, right? And like clearly like people did not think very hard about or like spend a ton of time and thought. It's like second screen content essentially. And I'm like, that isn't going to be good. If like it just makes it faster to turn out like kind of more schlock, what's the benefit to society? Your money, like money in your pocket, like that's money. It. Like,
I mean, I can't see any other way this not being gimmikified. Whoever does it first is gonna get a lot of buzz. Whoever does it second, third, fourth, fifth, like I think they're going to see diminishing returns. Like actively right now, studios are talking to AI companies about, if we give you all the seasons of Friends and you load them into an AI, can you generate new Friends episodes? We'll pay all the original cast members, $900 million for their likenesses and like the rights to their likenesses. Like, can we make infinite Friends seasons, from here on? And people think that this is a good idea. But I can't help but feel that, like we are not escaping. There's no escape velocity for the laws of supply and demand. You flood the zone, like you're going to decrease the value of your product.
Yeah. It's not good.
Now,
I don't like it.
I don't like it either. We have to get to it. Now, I personally, I don't really care for Natasha Lyonne. I'm going to be honest.
Okay, that's fine.
And she comes out with a wild quote here, and that she's since complained about the negative response she's gotten to it. I don't care. I'm piling in. She says, quote, "We need some sort of Dogma 95 for the AI era."
Which isn't the whole thing about that is it's anti-tech, kind of.
Bruh. If you don't know, if you are listening to this and you do not know what Dogma 95 was, Dogma 95 was a movement, a sort of tongue-in-cheek movement founded by Lars von Trier and Thomas Vinterberg in 1995, where they said that cinema had become too... that cinema had lost its way. It had become too focused on false idols, and we needed to sort of strip back to this sort of aesthetically pure cinema. And they wrote down these vows of chastity that filmmakers would have to take in order to be part of the Dogma 95 movement. And it was all these limitations on your work that you had to adhere by. But Natasha Lyonne is out here saying we need a Dogma 95 for AI. She continues, quote, if we could just wrangle this artist-first idea before it becomes industry standard to not do it that way, that's something I would be interested in working on. Almost like we are not going to go quietly into the night. How can a process be artist-driven when you're turning over essential elements of the creative process to a machine whose design is a mystery and
Right.
whose data set is unknown? I mean,
Yeah.
Dogma 95 stood for recentering films around artists away from big money concerns, but AI is essentially governed by corporations who
Yeah.
are only possible by massive corporate interests. Like you can only have like Natasha Lyonne and Mooser's company is only possible because people pumped $100 million into
Right.
it. So how could that possibly be artist driven?
I guess like because she's an artist, but I agree with you. I'm just giving what I think must be her it must be her thought process, right? That if like an artist is in charge of the company, and like I don't think that's gonna I don't think that's gonna help really in this situation. But I would assume that's her thought process. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was I'm glad you brought that quote up because I was just like, that's sort of, you're kind of like doing the opposite of what they were kind of interested in, lady.
It's
Ma'am.
only made all the better. And I can't believe we didn't talk about this 2 weeks ago. It's only made all the sweeter because the young filmmakers over at Zentropa Studios, where Lars von Trier and Thomas Vinterberg, the company that they founded in the mid 90s, at Cannes this year announced a new Dogma set of vows of chastity. They announced a Dogma 25 with the quote,
Wow.
in a world where film is based on algorithms and artificial visual expressions and artificial visual expressions are gaining traction, it's our mission to stand up for the flawed, distinct, and human imprint, said the 5 filmmakers at the Cannes Film Festival. They wrote a new manifesto, which is, quote, a rescue mission and a cultural uprising. And I'm going to pause the podcast here because I need to talk you through these vows of chastity, the new vows of chastity for Dogma 25, because I'm so all about this. I really am. I'm nerding out so hard over this. Okay. Number 1, and you'll see what, and it's already affecting my work. Number 1, the script must be original and handwritten by the director. Pen and paper.
This sounds like my history teacher. I had a history teacher who used to make us write all our essays, like handwritten.
I love him. I would have hated him when I was in high school.
Shout out Dr. Wanamaker.
Dude, Dr. Wanamaker, you're the man. You've got no respect at the time, but we can look back and yes, you're the man.
Yeah.
Okay, number 2, at least half the film must be written without dialogue, because they insist on a cinematic approach to filmmaking.
Yeah.
I love this. Okay, number 3, the internet is off limits in all creative processes. So they have these little addendums to them. So we commit to produce the films relying on real people within our physical reality rather than in a digital one infused with algorithms. Number 4, we'll only accept funding with no content altering conditions attached. Number 5, no more than 10 people behind the camera. Number 6, the film must be shot where the narrative takes place. That's the only one that's like an original Dogma 95 commandment. Number 7, we're not allowed to use makeup or manipulate faces and bodies unless it's part of the narrative. Number 8, everything relating to the film's production must be rented, borrowed, found, or used. We commit to making films using objects that already exist and renounce the ahistorical and self-destructive culture of consumerism. And number 9, the film must be made in no more than 1 year. We abstain from any lengthy processes that stand in the way of creative flow. I love all of this. I know it makes me a fucking dork, but I love this. And it couldn't stand more in the face of everything that Natasha Lyonne is running her goddamn mouth about.
Yeah. I'm surprised I didn't see that back when Cannes started. Like that's awesome. Well, speaking of jobs that don't exist anymore or losing jobs because of certain things that happen.
Technology, the internet.
Technology, there we go, the internet. There's a really wonderful piece on Vulture right now from Nate Jones about sort of, I guess that I don't want to say demise, that seems like too strong of a word, but sort of the struggles that casting directors have been going through lately, and sort of the fall of the art form of casting, you might say. So I think we talked about this when it happened, but a few weeks ago, the Academy announced that they'll be adding an achievement in casting category, which has been like a long running thing that people have always wanted them to add. Like, casting directors. There's a great quote in here, sort of towards the beginning, from Jennifer Venditti, who is cast for A24 a lot. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, Jennifer. But she says, oh, what did she say? Sorry. Here she says, we are one of the most important departments at the beginning of the movie and the first forgotten at the end, which I think is like, kind of like emblematic, I guess, of how casting is sort of thought of by the general populace. But at the same time that, the Academy is kind of like giving casting directors their flowers. A lot of casting directors' work has been upended by a lot of what's happened. There's been a pandemic that's pushed the process really online. We talked about self-tapes and kind of like the problems that go along with that a long time ago, a few months ago. And it's really difficult kind of in the age of social media and the internet and all of this sort of moving online to be an artistic casting director, I should say, is sort of like the crux of this article. So, Aaron, what did you think about this?
This is an amazing article. It's a
Mm-hmm.
heartbreaking story, but the
Yeah.
way the article was written is really fabulous, and I thought was some incredible journalistic work. So
Mm-hmm.
really shout out to the writer there. The first thing is that we had this conversation talking about Tiffany Roche and Raven Drummer
Mm-hmm.
laughing about only watching 4 seconds of auditions on a podcast, and then we had this clip from our podcast go viral on
Yeah.
TikTok, and we received received some support and then a lot of pushback, and it like actually kind of
Yeah.
like blew up in our faces. And this article is only repeating the very things that we were talking about at the core of that, which was we were not out here trying to say that Tiffany Roche and Raven Drummer are bad people at all. We were saying
Mm-hmm.
this is really sad, but these are people that are caught in a system that
Yeah.
is not prioritizing, that is certainly not working the way that it used to be, and that it's actually like, I think, disrespecting everybody involved, the casting directors too. And I think we
Right.
were trying to be very empathetic about that at the outset, that this is a sort of tragic situation that everyone feels trapped in. There were some
Mm-hmm.
numbers thrown out in this article, that we had a casting director was casting 250 roles for a third season of a TV show. Okay. To cast those 250 roles, she had to sort through 44,000 headshots, of which she then chose actors and received 5,000 self tapes for those
Yeah.
250 roles. That is insane. It
Yeah.
is the access to human capital, to talent that is like being submitted from all over the world and like claiming to work local for that market, whatever. Like,
Right.
it's just so ridiculous. From once upon a time when you had a casting office and you had 2 days to cast, and you only had so many hours in the day, and you could
Right.
basically invite like 15 to 20 people in to come and read, and you had to use your relationships, your taste, your instincts, whatever, to try to find those right people to come in and fill those roles. And it was really it was a people business, and now it's a thumbnail business. And that's a tragedy.
Yeah, there's a quote in here that made me really sad. It's a Tiffany Mack is the casting director's name. They're based in Vancouver, and they were telling the story about how they like saw a couple of actors at a restaurant that they had just booked like a couple hours earlier. They'd watched self tapes like a couple hours earlier, and they'd booked one of them on a show the week before. And they were like, quote, they don't know me and I didn't say who I was, but these are people who I've watched hours and hours of their tapes over the last few years. I'm just staring at them going, good for you. They sometimes forget there's a human who's pushing for them. And then end quote. And Nate Jones kind of finishes it off and says, casting directors used to be a face and a name. Now they're an email address. And I think in a lot of ways, this is like just sort of like, I feel I started my first like big journalism job kind of right smack in the middle of COVID. And it's like really hard because journalism is also like a people to people sort of business. And I still often feel like I'm mostly doing things on the phone now or like emailing a lot because of like COVID and just kind of like leftover COVID hangover, you know? Like it's easy to get on a Zoom, so why don't we? And I'm like guilty of it too. Like if I'm tired and I don't want to like leave my house, you know? So in a lot of ways, like this is something that I think is affecting every industry, but this in particular is just like it's really sad. It made me very sad to read all of this.
Yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, this goes back to like our TikTok that we got criticism for. One of the consistent things that we heard was casting directors coming into our DMs or into the comment section and saying, "Well, when we invite actors to when we give actors the option of coming in
Right.
person, they prefer
They send
self
in
tapes."
self-tapes,
And
which
like
like yeah.
and which like you're not wrong, like they're part of the
Yeah.
problem too. But you
Mhm.
know, like yeah, it's all it's not good. I don't know
It's
what else to
all
say.
bad.
Like
Yeah, I
th-
know.
this system enables it decentralizes humans from the actual filmmaking process. It takes away the human element. It makes it harder and harder. We have our star system, which used to sort of be the juggernaut of Hollywood. The pipeline is bereft of stars, but I think so much of it is because like casting directors are incentivized to spread more roles across more people, and not actually build up people's careers. And there's such a glut of oversupply of talent that it's really hard to sort of build up the next generation of stars.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, you have an older generation of stars that are getting, you know, first offers more across the board. And they also casting directors also talk about this problem in the article, which is that like they don't even get the joy of sort of discovering new talent anymore,
Yeah.
because so many of the shows are only sold based on the name attachments and can only get made based on name attachments. So really their job is just going through directors and sort of like of what their first offers to name talent are, and then you know
Mhm.
potentially telling them like there's no way you're going to get that person to come on your television show. Are you insane? And
Right.
like that's another sort of depressing reality of the modern state of casting. It's not about discovery and uplifting new talent and new voices. It's about like how do we possibly get this tenuous financial deal that has allowed this project to be greenlit over these next 2 weeks, and how do we get it pushed through the door? And the only way to do that is to guarantee name talent.
Yeah, you know, this article like points out like a ton of problems, and there was one in particular that sort of struck me, and it also leads into something. There's a couple parts in this article where he sort of goes through like the different reputations that streamers and studios have, which I thought was like a little bit of fun in an otherwise kind of sad article, or at least it made me kind of chuckle. But there's a section here where a casting director sort of talks about like it's not just the fact that like we're only really dealing with like the talent kind of virtually, like we're also dealing with like more people and their opinions virtually. And I'm sure like there have always been like producers and studio execs who have opinions on casting. Like I don't think that's anything new, but like it's very different when like you're in someone's office or you're like see them all the time and it's sort of like a face-to-face thing. Whereas like in this section, this casting director Victoria Thomas talks about like kind of being on an email and you've just got 10 people weighing in on your casting decision and you don't even know who half of them are or like what they do or what their job is. And so like what sort of impetus do you have to like take them seriously and like vice versa, you know? It's just really difficult.
Oh, dude, I have to deal with
Yeah.
as a corporate videographer.
Mhm.
I have to deal with this all the time. And in terms of
Yeah.
there's too many cooks of people I've never met weighing in on email, and somehow it's my job to synthesize and make sense of all these different inputs, and like I have to moderate it, even though like I'm being treated as the sort of lowest person in the totem pole because I was the hired out,
Mhm.
you know, talent, you know, to come in. Like they're the ones who actually have the like salaried jobs within an
Right.
institutional corporate structure. It's a terrible position to be in, and it's incredibly disheartening. You feel very powerless and very alone. I am not surprised that that's the way streamers operate
Yeah.
at all, but it definitely makes sense of like why these shows get so watered down and lame so quickly.
Right. Well, they talk about like kind of the different reputations. Like apparently Netflix has a bit of a reputation for having a lot of voices in the room. I feel like that
Shocker.
tracks. Like I think this next one also tracks. Like Apple will push back sometimes with ideas that aren't great but is generally amenable. I feel like okay, like that probably tracks. And then this Peacock one kind of made me laugh. Peacock, perhaps anxious about its status as a second banana service, is caught up in getting leads who are promotable. And that reminded me of the Maya Hawke thing, which also comes up in this article. We talked about it like I always say a few weeks ago. I don't know how long ago it actually was, but it was when Maya Hawke, I think she was on a podcast, and she talked about that kind of like studios wanting to cast based on Instagram followings and all that kind of stuff, which, there's like some skepticism from some casting directors in the article, and others were like, yeah, that definitely does happen. Like, kind of a little back and forth there. And then there are a couple of other ones I just wanted to mention, like some reputations that are not necessarily streamers, but more on like the show and studio side. Like casting director pros frequently mention The Bear and The White Lotus as examples of casting done the right way, like kind of projects that embrace risk, try to mint new stars instead of settling for old ones. I thought that was funny because I do think that's true in the case of The Bear, but I think what The White Lotus does that's very smart is like take people you kind of forgot about, and you're like, oh yeah, Leslie Bibb rocks. Like that's sort of the magic of The White Lotus,
Yeah, yeah.
And then they also, A24 apparently is pretty good about the casting process. But I just wanted to shout those out because I thought that was a little bit of fun in an otherwise kind of bleak, sad article. But,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, of course, it's not all bad. It's
Right,
it's not all terrible. We are getting new talent coming across the radar, but my heart really goes out to the actual workers of casting directors, casting assistants, people working in casting offices, who by and large, like, they're not going into those jobs because of the money.
Right.
They're going into those jobs because they're excited by the process. They like actors. They like working. They like working on stories. They like bringing them to fruition, and watching structural changes take place, mostly due to technology and sort of pace and the tenuous nature of film production, and watching these people get ground into a pulp is not cool. And it's just hard to see.
All right, we're doing this thing where we now try to end on a little bit of an up note. So this is a fun one. So HuffPost released this, I think last week. Like Aaron sent it to me and was like, we should have talked about this. I was like, yeah, we should have, because I have not like a personal connection to this movie, but a little bit of a personal thing. So essentially, a full cut of Jerry Lewis's most controversial film may have been found after 45 years. So that film is called The Day the Clown Cried. It's a 1972 film about Helmut Dork, who's a World War II era clown who's ordered by Nazis at a concentration camp to entertain the children as he leads them to the gas chamber. So that movie was never officially released, although it does sound a lot like Life is Beautiful, which I think is like quite funny. But so never officially released, kind of thought to be unfinished. A huge sort of like kerfluffle, if you will. There was a documentary.
I mean, legendary lost film.
There was a documentary at this year's Atlanta Jewish Film Festival called From Darkness to Light that examined sort of like the story of this movie and like why it had never kind of seen the light of day, etc. And this article mentions that a Swedish actor named Hans Crispin recently claimed to have stolen a version of the film for himself, which was in this documentary, and I just completely forgot about it. He like is in it. I'm pretty sure it's him, because he like, I read that and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. He talks about just like kind of taking it out. And I think Jerry Lewis at some point like kind of put it in like a library of sorts somewhere. I can't remember which one, and was like, you guys can see it in 2024. Like,
so yeah, he donated the raw footage or some sort of massive amount of uncut footage to the Library of Congress.
Yes,
as part of his collection.
A library of sorts. Yeah.
A library of sorts.
But he stipulated it to not be available for viewing until 2024, which I think is why this documentary kind of came out this year, because they finally have like some footage to sort of like look at from this documentary. So there's like quite a bit of footage in the doc itself. Crispin also, so I guess like the footage that he stole allegedly like didn't have the film's first act, and then he ended up getting the first act, and they've kind of like stitched it together and all this crazy stuff. But so we might get to see a kind of legendary failure of a film soon, maybe. That would be cool.
So, I mean, for 50 years, people have been, like super nerds have been claiming to like know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who has a
Right.
bootleg of
I
The Day
think
the
there's
Clown Cried. And people will tell stories like, oh, I was ushered into this back screening room and I watched it. And like, it was the most, everything from like, it was the worst thing I've ever seen to like, it was the most mind blowing thing I've ever seen. It's like, it's so horrifying that Jerry Lewis even made this movie. It's like you can't believe it's happening in front of your
yeah.
eyes. I mean, the legend of this film has just been percolating within the film intelligentsia for a long, 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 long time.
Yeah.
I dude, I hope I get to watch this movie.
I do too. I like, again, that documentary, you should check it out. I don't know if it's available for like streaming anywhere, but they do have a ton of footage from it.
Yeah.
And it's pretty, they also interviewed Jerry Lewis, like it's from obviously from before his death, but like he also seems like really embarrassed by the whole thing. And like there's sort of a heartbreaking kind of moment. Because they mention Life is Beautiful, which is like, again, kind of a very similar sort of structure, like a comedy
Yeah.
set at a concentration camp. And that movie obviously won Oscars, like won Academy Awards. And they sort of ask Jerry Lewis like kind of how he feels about that, and he has this like really kind of heartbreaking moment where he's very praiseful of the film, which I've never seen, but I don't know many people that hold it in like super high regard, but he's really like praiseful of it. And then he kind of says like he's a good comedian, and he just looks so sad. Like you really get the feeling that this thing kind of like broke him a little bit, and like his like feeling of what he was able to do. But I thought it's an interesting doc for sure.
I don't know. First of all, let me just put it out there. Like, I am a huge Jerry Lewis fan.
You love
I
Jerry Lewis? Yeah.
love Jerry Lewis. I think Jerry Lewis
Okay.
is a genius. I
Mm-hmm.
love his movies. And this is total projection, right? Because I haven't seen the movie. I'm not claiming to have been ushered into a back room and shown The Day the Clown Cried. But I love pieces of art that genius
Mm-hmm.
artists feel embarrassed by. Like,
Yeah.
very often, those things are some of the most incredible pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And because they were taking a real risk and like exposing some part of themselves that they feel icky about, and then they run and hide.
Yeah.
Um,
Never let anyone see it. He's like, absolutely not. Shut it away. Like,
yeah, this is such a very silly analogy, but Eminem Eminem talks about his album Relapse as this horrible embarrassment that he ever, like, I can't believe I ever put that album out. Like, it's so terrible.
mm-hmm.
Honestly, maybe my favorite Eminem album. Like, it's so out there. It's so filthy. It's so bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
And like, and you can feel him like really working through something in real time, so much so that
Mm-hmm.
like he felt icky about it and frankly hasn't made any good music since. Like and the thought that like we could potentially have this Jerry Lewis film that like is that icky, is that hard hitting, like, oh my god, I'm so excited. I really hope we get to watch it.
I am interested to see it. I remember thinking that, like, I don't know. I'm worried that, like, the way people have talked about it is gonna, like, really, like, is not maybe what it is. Obviously, I haven't seen the whole thing, but, like, what struck me about kind of the footage that's in there is, like, everyone's talking about it like, oh, it's so fucked up and it's so weird. It's like people talking about Seven when they're in elementary school. They're like, it's so fucked
Yeah,
up,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
Like, you know, but like
Yes.
a lot of the clips that I saw, it's like not very funny at all, which is kind of like maybe the problem. Like, you know, like it's really like it felt really serious and like kind of solemn, which is like not how people really talk about it or what I think it was supposed to be. But
Yeah.
I would love to see the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling that it's like this weird tonal
Hmm.
miss, but like potentially a great piece of art. Like maybe
Yeah.
not the greatest piece of entertainment,
Right.
but
Yeah. But definitely interesting.
well, this is exciting. Hans,
Yeah.
Hans has said he gave his stolen cut also to the Library of Congress, if I remember that from the article correctly.
He hopes his material can be added to the Library of Congress archive.
Oh,
He wants to give it. Yeah.
now,
Mhm.
now I
He
also
has
have to.
it He says his full copy of the film, as well as some original manuscripts, are locked in a bank vault for safekeeping.
Okay, I mean, let's also, this has happened multiple times over the last 50 years where someone has come out and claimed to have had a copy.
I haven't.
Yeah. And then like gotten articles written up, and it's always proven to be false. So Hans, don't fuck around. Don't let us down. Don't claim to have a Bigfoot in a ice cooler somewhere in Georgia. Like, come on, deliver the goods.
Please, man. Hans, please.
Yeah. We need something to cling on to. We need hope.
Something good.
Please.
The clown Nazi movie is all I need.
Yeah. Such an indictment of the modern world that the day the clown cried that's the hope we need to hold on to.
Oh my gosh. All right, I think that's everything.
That's it. This is great, Sammie. What do you got coming up? You got some reviews, you got some writing you can send us over to?
I got some reviews. I have a Life of Chuck, the new Mike Flanagan movie review coming out. I've
seen good things about this movie.
This is kind of a movie where I didn't really know that much about it going in. I've never read this Stephen King short story. I can see a lot of people finding it like a little too earnest and cute, maybe like sweet a little. As far as everyone I know who's read the short story has said that it's like a pretty faithful adaptation. Like that's kind of what the short story is. I really liked it. It kind of hit a lot of me points. Like there's a lot of like kind of classical Hollywood musical stuff in it, which I like did not expect at all. And I really, really loved a lot come Sammie Crack. Like, honestly, like I was sort of like, no one told me this is just about a little boy who wants to dance. Like, come on.
Oh my God.
I sort of love that.
Yeah, obviously.
So I was like,
movie I could imagine.
Yeah. So I thought it was quite like, people keep using this phrase like life affirming. And I'm like, that's like a really kind of like cheesy phrase, I think. But in a not cheesy way that I could say that. I like thought it was quite sweet and I liked it a lot. And then the other movie review I'll have coming out is Materialists, which I have not seen yet. I'm seeing it tomorrow. I'm really hoping this is good because if it is, it could really put me in a good mood. If it's bad, I'll be in a really bad mood. Yeah, nice. But I like Past Lives a lot, so I'm hoping, you know.
Yeah, we'll see. That's exciting. Please, everybody go check those out. I got nothing to promote right now. Shocker. I'm sure I'll come up with something
First time
soon.
in a long time.
Yeah. I'm sure I'll have something to run my mouth about. But in the meantime, if you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoyed this shows, please like, subscribe, rate, and review. Hit us with the 5 stars. Go on to Apple Podcasts. Go on to YouTube. Go leave a little comment. You know, you got to get in those comments. You got to say, hey, I think Aaron's doing a great job about this. I think Sammie's doing a great job about that. I totally disagree with him. You can disagree with us. That's fine. We'd like to hear that too. All feedback is open. You can always, check us out. Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. You can follow us at Crash Zoom Podcast on TikTok and Instagram. You can email us, crashzoompod@gmail.com. Email us, crashzoompod@gmail.com. We would love to read out some emails on the show. That would be a really fun thing to do. I think that's all the spiel that I have for now. So until next week, Sammie, I will be talking to you.
I'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.